Hey everyone, I didn't do my talk earlier today, so I thought I'd do it now before I sit down and have my supper and then maybe watch a movie or something. But I had a nice day. I feel like I'm a retired person in Canada because really I don't get to really work. I work like 3 to 6 months of the year. Most years, like the majority of my working life in Canada, I've been poor. I've been almost on the point of destitution, and I get to work 3 to 6 months, and then it's like 6 months to a year looking for work. So I'm hoping that now that I got this permanent job at Teleperformance, they find something else for me, because really and truly, I am tired of living this way. I mean, it's not what my goal is in life, to be destitute, to be poor, to not have anything, not own a home, not own a car, not get my driver's license. When I first came to Canada, I had to prioritize because I started getting my license to drive, but I was also studying. I was going to Rotman, and Rotman is expensive. When I took those HR courses, it was close to $10,000. So all the money I saved, I spent on that. Plus I was paying rent and board with my sister when I was staying with her. I was helping them. Plus I had transportation costs. Then I moved closer. I lived at Brownsline and Lakeshore. But things were very hard for me because I had to get the GO train to go into work. And I didn't have a washer dryer in my unit. I lived in a house on the second floor. So I had to go to the laundrette and sit there and do my laundry. And sometimes there were addicts that came in, there were drunk people. I used to always be frightened. Thankfully, nobody thought I was a prostitute and nobody approached me. But it was scary. I mean, I didn't have a choice because the owner of the home I lived in, he had a washer and a dryer in his unit, but it wasn't for us to use. And he didn't have an entrance where we could go in and just use those facilities. So I had to go out and use it. And then eventually I moved into a condo, and that's what I wanted. I was like, I'd rather live in Toronto and live a little more central and have a washer dryer in my own unit than be going out. And especially in the winter time, it's very, very hard, because we used to get a lot of snow, a lot of black ice, and I really did not like that. I mean, I've had a lot of challenges, a lot of things I've had to overcome, but I'm hoping and praying I get a good job with a good salary so that I can buy my own condo like I had before. I mean, it's nice to have the pool and to have the gym and all that, because I also save on a membership, a gym membership. And I love to swim. So for me, that's the biggest bonus. I don't use the gym that often, except in the winter time or when it's cold. Then I go and I use the treadmill and things, but I'm more of an outdoor person. I love to walk. So God has blessed me in that way. But again, you get what you pay for. So it's one of the things that I want to do, and I pray for it, and I'm sure many other people are praying too, that things come right in Canada, because if you're highly qualified and you're experienced, you don't want to work in a job where there's so much pressure on you all the time that you'll end up losing your health. I mean, when you study, you get to a point where you want to have the white-collar jobs, you want to be overseeing things, you want to be now training others, mentoring others, not to always be landing up in minimum wage. So let's see how it goes. But I do really feel like a retired person in Canada, because every time I start over in minimum wage, and every time I get back into management, again, people get me out of my jobs, or contracts are taken away, or they want to bring in their mentees. I mean, really, it gets to a point, it's like, Lord, please, I need a break here. So, anyway, I've read this today, and today the leadership thought was on a leader's ability to add value begins with the heart. So I'm only going to touch on one point, and it says that good leaders are always initiating acts of service. When Jesus rose at the Last Supper, he laid aside his garments and he began to serve. He took the towel and he girded himself. So normally, who serves? The servants. Now, Jesus was not a poor person. He was not somebody that was not well known. He was not somebody that was living in a tent somewhere off his head. He was not a leper. He was not an outcast. When he sent the disciples, he said, go to so-and-so and tell them the master needs the upper room. An upper room would have been more expensive. It would have been dressed with lounge chairs, with a table, and it was prepared. The feast was prepared. So Jesus gets up and he begins to serve. He begins to help. Instead of the servant doing it, he does it. And he's the teacher, he's the rabbi. And he doesn't do it begrudgingly. It doesn't tell us whether there was a servant there or not. But, Jesus was not poor by any means. To ride on a donkey was a symbol of prestige in the Jewish tradition. It's not like, today we have horses, but for them to have a donkey, it meant you came from a wealthy family, a middle-class family, an artisan family. It's the equivalent of us having cars. If you have a car, you're rich, because not only do you have to maintain that car, you have to get the insurance, you have to pay for it. And it's the same thing with them. They had to feed the donkey, take care of it. The donkey was also a service animal. So Jesus was not poor, but he gets up and he begins to serve his disciples, and he looks for opportunities to serve. And that's why we know that it's a partnership. He washes their feet and he helps them. He sets an example for them so that in turn they will do it for the rest of the group and they will do it for others. So that's the example of partnership. It's the example that we have in our own families. We don't just look at ourselves. We work with our people who are employed for us. When I was in Zimbabwe growing up, we used to serve in the shop. We didn't just sit back and say, tell people what to do. We also helped. We served the customers. We took the change. We gave the money. We wrapped the parcels. We put the things into bags for the customers. So we were working with people. In the home, I was helping our domestic workers. I used to help them to change the bedding. Sometimes I used to do it with my grandmother, but I used to also help the domestics. I used to change the bedding with them, help them to fold the clothes, help them to fold the bed sheets, and I used to work with them, even in the garden, doing the gardening. I didn't just tell them what to do. I did it with them. And even when I stayed with people, when I lived in Bulawayo, the family I lived with, they got into their cars and they went. They very kindly dropped me off in the morning, but then I walked. I used to walk 12 blocks to go to where they were working. And then I used to come home with them because things were hard for everybody. And I'm hoping and praying I'm able to buy that car, because really and truly I'm tired of having to walk places, and you get to a point where you want to have these things for yourself. And it's not like I don't know how to drive. I know how to drive, but I did not get my license in Canada. So when we go into partnerships, we work with people. We come alongside them. And that's the example that Jesus sets. It's not like Jesus said, okay, now, he told them, go and get the upper room and get the donkey, and they did all that. But then when they get there, he serves. And it's the same thing when we grew up in Zimbabwe. People knew me. When I went to the restaurants, when I went to Golden Mile, which was, I guess you could say behind or in front, depending where you are, but it was the turnoff coming to our home. The people there knew me. Mr. Sanders, the man who ran the beautiful gift shop that there was, I used to work for him sometimes. He had a beautiful shop where he sold leather goods, leather clothing, all the beautiful skins of our animals, the bags that were covered in the skins of the kudu, the giraffe, all the animals. Because when the animals die, they used to cull them, and then they used to treat the skins and sell the bags and all that. So people knew me, and they never treated me like, oh, that's her. They always were very welcoming. When I used to go to the restaurants, they used to say, hey, Miss Fernandez is here, get the table ready. Sometimes I wasn't even going there to have a meal. I said to them, no, I'm not coming to have a meal. I just came to get something. And they're like, no, you must come back. You must come back. I said, yes, I will come back. But people like me. Maybe my mother doesn't think that. But people do like me. And even my cousins, they like me. My mother told me nobody likes you. That's why they leave you out of everything. I said to her, well, I don't know about that. But as far as I know, people like me. You are the one who is telling me, don't come every time I want to come. So it's about partnership. And I push back. If people tell me, no, they don't like you, you're stupid, you are the problem, I say, no, I'm not. Before I used to just take it, but now I don't. I say, no, I'm not. I'm not the problem. And people like me, even when I was in Zimbabwe, when I was in Bulawayo, the family I lived with liked me, the people in the community liked me. Even when I went home now, after, over 15 years, when I went back 5 years ago, people were so happy. All the Indian people, the Harrys that I but who we lived next door to, they were all happy. The whole family was waiting for me when my dad's cousin dropped me off. They were all waiting to welcome me. They could have pushed off. They could have just left our neighbors there, Umesh and Pana and the children, and said, yeah, you people, we're pushing off. When she comes, you take her and go. They were all so happy that I came home. And they said, next time you don't leave it so long. And next time you come, you make sure you come and stay with us. You don't go and stay with anybody else. Don't even stay with your dad's cousin. You make the arrangements with us. You tell us when you're coming, we will come to the airport and pick you up. That's how much people like me. Because I don't lord it over others. I don't say, oh, I'm a spiritual director and you are nothing. And I went to university and you can't do anything. Lots of people treat me that way. But that's how it is when you look at Jesus' teaching, when you look at who he is and who he was and who he is for us. That's where the idea of partnership comes from. And it's a year since we lost Sinead O'Connor. And we miss her, us Catholic women, because she stood up against women being raped. She stood up against the child abuse in the church. She stood up against all the things that are happening in the church. And we needed her voice. And the reason she took that photo of the Pope and she tore it up is because other popes stood up to it. Other popes would not tolerate it. But our church became soft in the head. It's like, oh no, show compassion. Oh no, don't talk about it like that. Oh, you know, these children, they make up stories. Or, you know, sometimes there's irregular relationships. Our church never used to be like that. Never. So it's good that she stood up to it. Because in Ireland, in other places, women got raped. You were a man's property. The man could do whatever he wanted with you. And the man was the head of the house. It was not a partnership. It was not a co-creation of man and woman being equal. Even those Magdalene sisters, there's movies about it, about the cruelty with which they treated the Irish girls. And now they took them and they made them wash those sheets after the abortion. They made them wash those sheets. And some of those women could not leave there unless a man was willing to take them. They could not get jobs, they could not work, they did not have the right to vote. That's why I go and vote. Sometimes I even have to write it on my calendar or set a reminder in my phone that, oh, you need to go and vote. Because even my grandmother used to tell me, you must never let go of that vote. And if you get married, you must make sure the property is always in both your names. And you must get an education and you must study. You must have your own financial security. Because she did it. She never went to university, but she ran her own business. So that is what partnership is about. It's not about us lording our education over others or lording our degrees over others. We work hard, yes. We go to university and we work hard because we want to have good lives. But if people are constantly putting us down, putting us back to minimum wage, not putting us forward for promotions, how are we going to come up? We can only put our faith in God. And you'll notice the way I write my evening prayer, I don't put what we are asking for, because there's a tradition in the church which has fallen away, where you just pray for that person and you ask for God's will to be done. Because God's will is always good. So that's how I write my prayers. Sometimes I will put what I'm asking for, but most of the time I keep that old tradition. And I like the old ways. I like the old mass. I like everything that we used to have. I don't like this new mass, but that's what they want. So I say it. I don't like this when we say the I confess and the striking the breast and the changes they brought in. I don't like it. But I say it because that's the way it is now. So that's about partnership. And they don't stop me because I tell the Jesuits. If I don't like something, I tell them. And they know that I'll tell them. And that's the way it should be. That's what partnership is about. And what Sinead O'Connor said should happen is happening. That the church had to break down. It was painful, but it had to break. Because the Pope is not somebody up there. The Pope is our shepherd. And it had to happen. And some people don't like it. Well, that's tough.